Step back in time to see a legend, a real pioneer in motorcycle history. He was a real showman. He was fearless. He did things on a motorcycle no one had ever done before. He took wheelies to a higher plane, and thousands have now followed his lead. He was a celebrity, and his fame spread far and wide. He traveled the world, and people everywhere were in awe of his great talents. He was named in the Guinness Book of World Records. Some of his feats have never been equaled. Step back in time and see a legend. Doug Domokos, the Wheelie King. Doug Domokos was a real entertainer. And like most entertainers, Doug loved to perform. He had an extraordinary talent for wheelies, or riding a motorcycle on its rear wheel. And this talent quickly developed into a complete wheelie show. Hardly anyone had ever seen a motorcycle ridden this way, so the crowd really loved Doug, and Doug loved the crowd. Doug Domokos came to be very well known for his tremendous talent, and his wheelie show soon became a welcome addition to numerous motorcycle events throughout the United States, and eventually, the world. Let us tell you Doug's story and show you how he became a legend in his own time, and why he will be forever known as the Wheelie King.
I've always loved motorcycles and bicycles. When I was a kid, I used to pretend on a bicycle that I had a motorcycle. And at 15, I got my first motorcycle. Well, right away, I just wanted to go out and race it with the big guys, you know. And at 16, I got to start racing motocross. And I got into that really heavily. And about 6 years later, I got a pro license to see how good I was against the pros at my local track. I was pretty good. I beat those guys at my local track. But I wasn't in the shape they were in, so I kind of faded out of that and concentrated on the wheelies.
To my knowledge, the first time Doug did an official wheelie show for a crowd would have been at Redbud at a Friday night race, and he and two other local guys, and they put together a wheelie show, and they went back and forth in front of the crowd, and two of them would come down one side and the other down the middle, and it was pretty neat back then. It would have been in the 70s, and the crowd loved it, and he loved the crowd. He really got into that, and that really fed him, and he wanted to build a show from that.
The first time I met Doug Domokos was in 1978 at upstate New York, the U.S. Grand Prix at Unadilla. And he was the featured performer at the intermission, and he wheelied around the track, and nobody from the West Coast had ever seen Doug Domokos before. And he made it look so easy. So later he came up in the tower, and I said, "Son," I said, "you're going to be a star." And he said, "Pal, I already am a star."
First time I met Doug was the mid to late 70s at the Speedway motorcycle races. I was pretty well known for wheeling a Speedway bike around the track, and Doug showed up and did his exhibition, and it was pretty incredible. All the professional racers in the pits, man, it emptied out and everybody went to the crash wall to see this guy. He did some amazing stuff. I mean, from wheeling over the top of cars to riding clear around the racetrack to, I mean, just stuff that you'd never seen anybody do on a motorcycle before. He was quite an amazing individual.
The first time I ran across Doug Domokos was when I was the research and development manager at Kawasaki Motors Corporation, which included our motocross team, a motocross coordinator who worked for us, a guy named Steve Johnson, came to me and he said, I met this kid in Redbud, Michigan that can ride a wheelie like you can't believe. He rides around the whole track on the rear wheel. You got to see him. He says, is there some way we can get him a bike, get him some help? What can we do? So Steve Johnson brought Doug out to the West Coast to meet me. We got him at Kawasaki to try out, and went from there, and that's the start of his career in the big time in motocross, and obviously the show that he put on during the motocross events.
First time I met Doug, I believe it was 1978. I was a privateer on the Nationals, and I was parked at the hotel for tech inspection impound, and I was a little bit late, so I had to park on a side street, a little ways from the hotel parking where all the factories were parked and everybody. And this guy was on a Mako, I believe. I didn't know it was Doug at the time, and he was wheeling in the parking lot, really slow, and up and down the streets, put on a really good show, and I'm wondering, well, who is this guy? So anyway, that's how I met Doug, and we were friends ever since. I think it was 1978.
The first time I met Doug, we were filming on Any Sunday 2 at the LA Coliseum, and he was premiered as the halftime entertainment. Actually, we took this picture, right? As you see, the stadium was fully packed, and so I decided that Doug Domokos, this kid we'd never seen, he was the Wheelie King. What is that? So we decided that there was this super platform up at the top of the peristyle, to the right of the peristyle, way up at the nosebleed section of the Coliseum, and we had this little platform of wood, and he had a motorcycle sitting on top of it, and he was the Wheelie King. So I thought that when we go up here, we're going to go up and watch Doug, and he's going to ride his motorcycle down the stairs of the Coliseum and come out on the track in a great performance. And when they announced his name, suddenly, one thing about Doug is that when he was calm, mild-mannered speaking, but when he put a helmet on, he changed. These motorcycle racers, they put a helmet on, they change. They're different. So they announced Doug's name. He put his helmet on. He lifted that motorcycle up on its back wheel, and he took it all the way down the steps of the Coliseum on the back wheel without touching. I thought he was going to ride it down and go to the floor below and perform his show. He rode it all the way down. He bumped off the 6-foot wall. He landed on the motocross track on his back wheel, and he went twice around the stadium without ever touching, drove away, and the crowd just totally went berserk. He had so much charisma, that kid. It was something. It was something different.
To wheelie a motorcycle takes total coordination, I guess is how you would describe it. You're working the throttle to keep the thing balanced, you're working the rear brake to keep it from going over backwards, you've got to lift the front wheel and keep it in the proper gear selection. On top of that, you have to keep it from going side to side and over backwards. So it's literally a balancing act with about 8 different controls going all at once.
Doug's wheelies always looked so perfect. The techniques he had just came second nature to him. And I asked him about it one time, and it was all about if the front wheel starts to lower, you give it more gas. If you start to go over backwards, you tap your back brake. He had a little motor on the front wheel that would just keep that front wheel perpetually spinning, and it kind of freed Doug up to be able to focus not so much on balancing, which already came easily to him anyway, but that really led him to do a lot of different things on the bike. He'd do his 360s, and he'd have people on the handlebars. He had my grandpa on his handlebars on his 3-wheeler when he was 75 years old. We've got pictures of him driving through the backyard, and I think it was cool when he was a teenager that his dad was encouraging this wheelie thing. I thought it was a unique thing because it tied his dad into his whole dream and his career.
He was a sensational performer, and he was the utmost at the sport. I mean, he invented his own sport. Doug Domokos invented a sport only for him. He's like Evel Knievel in the 60s. And when it got to the 80s, Doug Domokos did things on motorcycles that other people, they didn't even attempt it because they knew they couldn't do it. He was a pioneer. He invented his own niche with a motorcycle.
Boy, the crowd responded to Doug. It was the pressure he had to do a Supercross. I did the Supercross series when he was riding for Honda. He did every Supercross track on a wheelie. And nobody, including the riders, we could not imagine how we wheelied those tracks. I still can't to this day. I don't know how we wheelied half those tracks, and he even said the same thing. He didn't know how he did it, but the crowd would just, it was so awesome. They always thought there was a trick involved because it wouldn't be possible to do it. And the riders felt the same way. We could not believe what he could do on one wheel. It was really amazing. The stutter bumps would be out of sand, and they'd just be rockers, and he would go right through this on one wheelie, and he had everybody in their seats stand up. It was pretty impressive, really impressive.
As far as the thing that Doug did at the time, it was very out of place. Obviously, wheelies were something that you did when you were playing around and just doing stuff occasionally. He did it for spectator enjoyment as part of the motocross show, which now we've seen motocross grow. Of course, obviously with the X Games and the flips and all of that stuff, Doug was really the pioneer in that field. He was the guy that brought that to the attention of a stadium audience. People would sit down and watch him do those things, and obviously that led to some of the things that we see today in motocross and the X Games and that side of stuff with the backflips and all of that.
And on a bike, he could wheelie any kind of a bike. He could wheelie a street bike. I mean, the magic wasn't just in that little motor on his wheel. The magic was his balance. That was just a tool, but he could wheelie a Harley, he could wheelie a Goldwing, he could wheelie a motocross bike. Obviously, the lighter the bike, the more tricks he could do, but any type of bike, he could do something with it with the front wheel in the air.
I don't remember exactly what year it was, the 70s. I think it was the late 70s. We went to the Wembley Indoor, and they brought Doug over there to do an exhibition. And, you know, all the proper British people are sitting in the stands quiet, waiting to cheer for their favorite rider. And when Doug came out, they didn't know how to react, actually. It took them a few minutes to catch on, and then they just, the place erupted once they saw what Doug could do.
Occasionally, Doug would, you know, have a mishap, or he never ever saw him fall off a motorcycle. But occasionally, you know, a mishap in his sport is if the front wheel touches, you know, that's almost like failure. He would go across these motocross tracks that normal people couldn't even ride a motorcycle across, only on the back wheel. And if the crowd roared, he performed for the crowd. When he was going over the track, maybe 2 or 3 times I saw him have a mishap where he did have to put the front wheel down. He would immediately turn the motorcycle around, go back to the place where he had dropped the front wheel, perform the event over, do it precisely correct as he wanted it, and continue on. And he would do this most of the time, many times, with one hand on the handlebars with an American flag in his hand. Not both hands on the bars. Not all the time. That was very boring to him.
I've seen Doug do a lot of unique things. We actually, one of the last times that he performed was at a racetrack that I owned in Victorville, and we had what was called World Record Night, and he wheelied over 6 cars, which was pretty amazing to do at the time. That was the world record.
Doug Domokos in other areas was very professional. He was the epitome of the professional stuntman. He actually had a great role in Cannonball Run, the Burt Reynolds, Dom DeLuise movie of the late 70s, early 80s, in which he wheelied across the desert with a dummy on the back of this motorcycle. He was also featured in the television show That's Incredible, and was brought back for a repeat on the show. And when he wheelied out onto the set, he knocked out the first couple letters, and it came out, "That's inedible." And he cracked up on that. He thought that was so very funny, but he was extremely popular. He was, of course, in the movie On Any Sunday too. He was in a number of television shows, and he was a true professional.
Lombard Street in San Francisco is often thought of as the crookedest street in the world. But after signing with Kawasaki in the late 70s, this was just the kind of challenge Doug was looking for. He was all set to do a wheelie up this curvy street for the television show That's Incredible. No one had ever attempted a stunt like this before on television, so it was really quite an event. It required tremendous skill to wheelie a motorcycle around these tight curves and up such a steep hill. As you can see, Doug was up to the challenge and made it up Lombard Street with ease. Coming down the hill was another matter. You see, it is much more difficult to wheelie down a hill than to wheelie up a hill. And just to make matters worse, the show's producers put a few obstacles in Doug's path on the way down. Like backing this car in front of him, forcing him to go down steps. Now what? Another car? Well, that didn't stop Doug, and he went over it this time. Hey, let's see that again in slow motion. Well, it was pretty obvious to anyone watching that no one could wheelie a bike like Doug could. And needless to say, Doug was a really big hit on the show. Doug's fame soon spread overseas, and he was off to do a TV show in Japan. And it sure is easy to see why he was such a big hit over there.
When Doug's book came out, that really inspired a lot of people to start doing wheelies. And they got to build off what he created all through these years and copy what he's done. And they would pinpoint one area they wanted to do, and Doug did everything. Three-wheelers, high wire, long distance. I mean, Doug's done it all. And they would pinpoint one area that he'd done, and they'd try to beat that. And I think that really helped a lot of people improve on their wheelies, the book, and the concept of wheeling. It really helped a lot of people a long ways.
It's quite an interesting book, because obviously you could read the thing as like an instruction manual for anything, but if you didn't have the talent to go with it, it probably wouldn't do you much good. You'd probably fall off.
It kind of occurs to me as you look back at the things that Doug did on a motorcycle. Nobody was doing those kind of things on a bike before. The closest thing to what Doug did was really trials. He was about so much more than just the wheelies. His thing was to make his body one with the motorcycle and to make it do things that nobody else could do. And really the closest thing you see to that today, besides the trials, maybe the freestyle. He did some things sort of like that, but I don't think anybody was doing that kind of stuff back then, or at least he hadn't seen it. You know, these were unique things to him, and you saw a lot of things evolve from that. And I imagine as he traveled around, it gave a lot of different people different ideas of things they could do on their bikes and start copycat types of shows.
And copy him they did. All sorts of copycats began to spring up. Guys who copied Doug's routine and stunts were as far away as Japan. But nothing could stop Doug's talent, and Honda soon came calling. They offered Doug full sponsorship to use their bikes in his shows.
Since I've gotten with Honda, they turned me on to the 185 ATCs, the three-wheeler motorcycles, and I've done a lot with those. At first I didn't think I'd like the bikes because I'm a two-wheeled nut. I really wasn't into the three-wheel thing, but after we got the bikes and we took it to special projects at American Honda and did a lot of R&D on it, a lot of cutting, a lot of changing stuff, adding a lot of stuff, we got the bike to do what I wanted it to do, and that's to turn while I'm doing the wheelie so I can do 360s. It's not that easy. The thing about, a lot of people ask me if, it looks too easy. Doug, you make it look too easy, why don't you make it look harder? Well, that's 13 years of practice, man. I've been doing this for 13 years, riding motorcycles and wheeling for 13 years, so, naturally it's going to look easy. You wouldn't believe the energy you get from people. You're standing in front of people. Everybody's eyes are on you, and you get so much energy, it's unreal. Like those rock and roll singers, they say nothing else is as intense as that, and I believe it, because I've been in front of 79,000 people at Anaheim Stadium. It was packed, and you can't believe that rush you get. All those eyes are on you. There's a lot of energy focusing on you.
Because Doug had a number of motorcycles and ATVs in his act, he would have to drive his van to all the shows across the country. And he was always trying to get other people to go with him. He tried to get, I said, you're out of your mind, I'm not going to drive with you.
Bad news, dude.
Doug Domokos set a number of records. One was the world's longest wheelie, I think it was 146 miles. And it was interesting because he finally had to put the front wheel down for two reasons. One, he had to pee real bad, and the vibration from the bike, from riding it, was like 2.5, 3 hours. And the second thing was the gas truck didn't reach him in time. In other words, the front wheel was up in the air, and every hour or so the truck had to pull up and put the gas in without him putting the wheel down. They didn't get there in time, and he had to go to the bathroom, so that ended it, but it did make the Guinness World Book of Records.
My claim to fame is the world's longest wheelie, which is 145 miles. It was set in 1984, about 2.5 hours, about 50, 55 miles per hour average speed. I ran out of gas, and I was so tired, I didn't want to continue on.
Doug on the World Championship wheelie distance, I wasn't too much involved. He was real busy. I wasn't seeing him too much at that time, but I remember he told me a story about after he did it, and he said it was really difficult to fuel the bike, but to achieve the goal he did when he did it, he had to refuel the bike while on the wheelie, and I seen him inventing that at his house and talking about it, and that went through a lot of thought process to make that happen.
After Doug had sent the record for the world's longest wheelie, a Japanese trials rider in Japan set a longer record. It was extremely well organized, probably better than Doug's was organized. And it was a trials rider with a specially equipped trials bike with a big tank, and he beat Doug Domokos' record. And I never heard Doug put the guy down. I think he respected him for doing it.
I know after Doug's distance record was broke, Doug and I had been in contact, and we were trying to put something together. He wanted to do it on an American-made motorcycle. He wanted to do it on a Harley-Davidson or a Buell. He wanted to retake that record, and it was something that I kind of wished I could have helped him with, and never quite got it all put together. But that was some of the last times that I had spent with Doug.
On April 13, 1986, Doug attempted to set a world record by doing a wheelie with 12 people on a three-wheel ATV. This actual footage taken by a friend shows his 3 attempts. Doug's 3rd try was successful with a world record.
York City for the Cycle World International Motorcycle Show. And Doug suggested that we take his bike to the top of the Empire State Building and wheelie around it. And we got permission. They put it in the elevator and took it up the 114 or 15 stories, whatever it is. And then he wheelied around the top of the observation tower, and it made the Guinness World Book of Records. It was windy. It was difficult. They tried to keep the crowd back, but a lot of people gathered around to see him because anytime you wheelie a motorcycle, it draws a crowd. And he made it around without any problem, without putting the front wheel down.
Doug tried a lot of stunts in his early days before he found his real niche, but not many people know that Doug had actually done ice racing at one time.
Tell you what, it's one of the neatest feelings you can have because you're on the ice, you know, your feet are slipping around and everything else, but your bike's staying stable. You can do a full lock slide. That's when the bike's totally sideways, you're on the gas, and you're just so confident that the bike's not going to fall down. It's just a really neat feeling.
Doug's experience racing on the ice later proved extremely valuable when, in later years, he did his wheelie show completely on an ice rink in Canada.
The worst I've been hurt, I tore an anterior cruciate ligament in my knee in half riding wheelies, and that's the only thing I've done to myself in the past 5 years that I've been doing this professionally. So it hasn't been too bad on me. It's not like a jumper thing. I don't have anything to do with the jumpers or anything like that. My bike always stays on the ground.
Professionally, I've been riding for 15 years, and I've been riding motorcycles, I believe, for around 25 years.
And you have done some movie appearances as well, possibly some in our own video library that we can go back and check out.
Yeah, you can probably get the Cannonball Run. I doubled Bert Convy in a movie. I did all the stunts on the Sportster and the wheelies and stuff. And also a movie called Megaforce, where I doubled Barry Boswick. We got to ride these weird-looking bikes and shoot rockets in the air. It was a kick.
Good question is, how do you improve on an act like this now? You run this show particularly throughout the year. How do you improve on something like this?
Oh, you add bits and pieces. You think up new stunts in your brain, and you see yourself doing it in your mind. You go out and try it. It usually works, and you take it out to the people.
I'll keep in mind to everyone here that the stunts you did down here, especially that on the high wire act there, you had absolutely no practice with that. You just set that thing up and went about and did it just now as we all seen it.
No, I don't like to practice on 20 feet in the air. The way you do practice that, though, is by getting about a foot off the ground. That way, if you fall over, you don't get too hurt.
Most of Doug's fans remember his famous upside-down wheelie, but few fans realize just what it took to master this fabulous stunt. Nearly all of Doug's stunts required hours and hours of dedicated practice to perfect them. Watching clips from these practice sessions gives us an idea of how Doug became such a master at pleasing as many fans. And please them he did.
I was 15 years old. I got my first motorcycle. It was a Yamaha 175 Enduro, and I accidentally let the clutch out too much. The thing went up in the air and like scared the heck out of me, and God, I kind of liked the feeling at the same time.
After Doug's wheelie book came out,
What I ended up doing is giving everybody all my ideas, and blammo, I just kind of, ran myself out of Hollywood.
at this time in Doug's career, a lot of people were doing wheelies and breaking records. So Doug planned to ride this bike over 300 miles for a new record, with a refueling method similar to that used by the big military jets.
Where the F-16 comes into the motor tanker ship, the fuel tanker, I got basically the same thing going on right there. I'll pull up beside a pickup truck with a long boom out there, and they'll pump me a gallon or two at a time while I'm doing a wheelie.
One of the most spectacular and most difficult things that Doug ever did, and remember that Doug Domokos always made it look so easy, which is the mark of a true genius. But he had his rollover quad, which was a three-wheeler with a roll cage on it. And you had to get up to a certain speed and then jam on the front brakes and roll over and over. So Doug is one of the few people in the world that could do it.
Well, it's another three-wheeler with a roll cage on it, and it's not meant to be any kind of safety device. This thing is very unsafe. If I were to come unstrapped in this thing as I'm doing a roll on it, it'd probably break my neck. I got a lot of steel around me in here. And, well, I made it on the high wire thing, man. I feel really good about that, so I'm going to go out there and bust a little booty on this thing.
It's an interesting conception, but one would wonder, shouldn't Doug's head be below the cage?
Yeah, you got to be all stooped down in here. You got to really crouch down in here and cinch down the belts. My whole show, I have a 20-minute show, right? Choreographed music, the whole routine. And the thing I do before the high wire usually is a rollover. And a lot of times I'll come down square in my head, and I know I got a slight concussion, and I go up those cables, and man, I mean, woo!
How about these special seat belts?
Yeah, same thing Spanky's got, same kind of belts. You know, I'm all buckled in here really nice and tight and stuff like that. And, you know, we got a nice crowd out here tonight. So we'll go out there and I'm going to try to roll this thing about 3 or 4 times, see what we can get out of this thing.
What Doug did often get out of the rollover stunt was a sore neck, and he would sometimes need to see a chiropractor to get put back together. Most fans never realize what Doug went through to put on a show, because Doug was a real trooper and never complained.
Doug loved anything with a motor on it, and he could ride anything with a motor on it. He could ride jet skis, he could ride any kind of motorcycle, including the big 6-cylinder Kawasaki. He was excellent on anything. He was a natural talent when it came to riding something motorized.
One of Doug's passions was hang gliding and anything to do with skydiving, hang gliding, ultralights, all those kinds of things. And that was one of the things he always wanted me to do, and I just didn't have the heart to do that. I couldn't do it. But he'd tell me stories about landing his hang glider in power lines and getting stuck in those. And he just thought that was great adventure. And I wasn't into that kind of adventure, but he really enjoyed everything about it.
Doug Domokos had several accidents while he was hang gliding. The most famous was when he hang glided into power lines and was stuck on these 100,000 volt power lines until the fire department came and got him down. And afterward, the rescue people said this guy was so cool being up there, he didn't panic. If he'd have touched the line and moved like 6 inches or 8 inches in one direction, he'd be killed. And I asked Doug about that, and he said, just call me Sparky.
Some of the different things Doug did, he did the high wire with his 3-wheeler where he set up the 2 wires and he had a ramp going up, kind of to 2 telephone pole type of setups, and then he'd go straight across for a while on the 2 wires, and then he'd ride his ramp down, which was the 2 wires, and his front wheel had to stay up or he was going to have some horrendous head-first crash off the wires. But it was pretty spectacular to see him as he's going up the wire ramp. The suspension is building, and the crowd's thinking, oh my gosh, he's actually going to go across the top of that thing, and right across he'd go, perfectly smooth, and everybody's jaw just dropped.
Doug's high wire trick, I tell you, that was impressive. First time I see him on the high wire trick, I think he was building it, and I was over at his house, and he was telling me what he was going to do, and I thought he was half kidding me. I couldn't believe he was going to do the high wire trick. And he said, no, I'm serious, I'm going to build this high wire trick, and I'm going to wheelie over these wires. And he did it. And I can't believe it. I don't think nobody's done it to this day, and I don't think nobody wants to do it. Or I don't think they can do it.
People were blown away when they would see Doug Domokos wheelie a three-wheeler on the high wire. And it was a real crowd pleaser. They just could not believe that anybody would do that. You get 20, 30 feet in the air, wheeling on a three-wheeler, on a Honda three-wheeler, with no safety net. Nobody'd ever done it before, and I don't think anybody's going to do it since then.
Perhaps Doug's most extraordinary stunt was the 30-foot high-wire wheelie he performed in a 40-mile-an-hour wind in the fall of 1995 in Oklahoma. This could easily have been called a truly death-defying act, because Doug was attempting a wheelie higher than he, or anyone else for that matter, had ever done before. Here Doug is being interviewed as he is preparing for the stunt.
Yeah, I'm making some last-minute changes here. Still trying to wait for the wind to blow down, calm down a little bit, but I think the wind's kind of picked up a little bit, so that's tough. That's the scary part, because if I get a little gust up there, it throws my balance off, and I don't like to think about it, man. It bugs me. Yeah, actually, I have two sets of high wire equipment. I go overseas a lot, and I just combined them together here, so I got over 300 feet of cable out there. Usually it's 156 feet long. So I got some shackles up there in the top where the two thimbles are, where they're stuck together, so I got kind of like a speed bump up there. And I got to hit it just right. I got to come right over the top where the bends are up there, and then I kind of got a bunny hop over this little thing up there. And I'm hoping, man, I don't get a wind gust at that point, because that's where it gets scary up there. My back is going to be hit by the wind, and believe it or not, when you get a gust up there like that, it tends to push you. Push you a lot. So I'm just hoping the wind just mellows out for my little section here. I've never rigged this up 30 feet high before. I brought it from California straight here. And we rigged it up for the first time yesterday. And I haven't tested it. There's one span up there before you get to the very top. There's a wide span where there's no supports. See, it'd be almost impossible. I would say impossible to pull those 5/8 cables tight enough for the full length of the thing, because you get this twisting effect up there. Okay, and that's going to be the real critical part. That's the pucker factor area right there. And if the cable's not tight enough, you'll see me go a little fast. I'll feel it out. If it feels pretty rigid, I'll go, a pretty good pace and feel the wind and everything. But if it's sloppy at all, man, I'm going to haul bud.
With such a dangerous stunt, Doug took extreme care to prepare his ATV. This was Doug's specially equipped three-wheel ATV with independently controlled brakes. Since Doug's front wheel was always suspended in the air, these special brakes allowed him to steer by applying resistance to the right or left rear wheels independently. Another critical factor in a stunt like this was making sure the scaffolding and wires were in perfect condition, as they would be supporting him throughout the stunt. As Doug travels up the wires, we must remember that he has a 40-mile-an-hour wind at his back, and at any moment, a strong gust could knock him off balance and result in disaster. And the higher Doug goes, each moment means more danger. Finally, Doug reaches the top. He does his spectacular balancing act and then starts down, hoping the wind will hold. At last, Doug is finally on the ground and the crowd goes wild.
Well, the high wire's 30 feet high. When I'm on top of the thing, I'm actually about 35, 36 feet high, so it's high, man. It's scary. I was focusing so hard trying to keep the bike steady going up the thing because the wind was blowing me around that I didn't even see anything anymore. I was focused on the main pole and almost blanked out, man. I was just so strung out and I just focused so hard. No, it's pretty cool coming back down. The hard part was making her up there, getting over those speed bumps, trying to stop at the top, you know, get comfortable a little bit there, feel it out, then continue on down. The real critical part coming down, though, is that big gap up there. And if I did get a gust right or left, or let's say one of the wheels loses traction, this has got a total slip differential on it, so one wheel will overspin the other wheel, so I got to really be careful and I got to steer the thing the whole time. Yeah, it felt pretty good. You know, I want to thank my good buddy Jim Gordon, who I picked up out of Indianapolis here, a good friend of mine. He helped me come out here. Didn't ask any questions, just helped me rig this whole thing up. I want to thank my dad, Frank Domokos, for designing this whole thing for me. He does all my numbers and triangulations and stuff like that, and everybody else that's helped me on this project out here. Man, I'm telling you, it's like slow motion, think of death shit, you know, like you go really, really slow, and you're thinking the whole time, man, don't blow it, don't blow it, don't blow it.
On November 26, 2000, Doug Domokos was killed in the crash of a small ultralight motorized hang glider. He is mourned by his family, friends, and fans the world over. He will be greatly missed.
When Doug brought that huge Kawasaki to the house and was doing wheelies up and down the streets and burnouts and performing all kinds of fantastic events, I had a 5-year-old son who had been riding motorcycles since he got a motorcycle, a Honda 50Z, for his 3rd birthday, and he was about 5 years old. And I'll never forget, he came out the driveway and he said, "Can I have a ride? Can I ride on the bike with him?" So Doug picked him up and he put him on the tank. And we had a long driveway, and he rode up and down the driveway. And then he pulled in, and Doug was special. So he said, "Can I do a wheelie with your kid on the bike?" And my wife, Sherry, at the time, came running out of the house, and she goes, "You're going to do what?" And I said, "Oh, boy, this blows the whole thing." But she said, "Let me get Kevin's helmet." So she went in, got his little red helmet. She put this kid, he grabbed the handlebars on that motorcycle, and Doug lifted that thing up and took it down the street. He was hanging on it like a flag flying in the wind. He didn't let go of the bars. He wasn't afraid. He knew that he was in safe hands. He was with the Wheelie King.
Hi, my name is Kirk Trainer. I live in Verona, Wisconsin. I've been a motorcycle enthusiast pretty much my whole life. I started riding when I was 6 or 7 years old. I started racing motocross when I was about 13, 14. And everybody knows with the racing motocross comes wheelies. It's just a thing you do, and now I'm a wheelie fanatic. I met Doug Domokos over the years, and I've been blessed to own the stunt 3-wheeler and one of his motorcycles, and I'd like to show you some stuff with the motorcycle and the 3-wheeler. The name Captain Kirk came from Doug Domokos. When I first met him, he didn't know if it was Kurt or Kirk, and I had to explain to him it's Kirk, and ever since then he called me Captain Kirk. This was the original bike he used for his stunts. He had a bar put on back here when he would do wheelies with standing up with both of his feet. He had a back brake up here so he could balance it out. It's got a smaller carburetor on it, so it don't get fed as much fuel when it's at a up and down angle. It's got a bigger sprocket to gear it down, slow it down. It has a electric motor on the front to spin the front wheel while it's doing wheelies. So you can negotiate your turns, and helps you balance front and back and side to side. This back brake on Doug's motorcycle, the back foot brake, it's just a stock brake. The first company that sponsored Doug while he was doing his shows was Kawasaki, and later on he moved to Honda, was sponsored by Honda. And this was one of the last bikes that he did his shows on was ATK, was sponsored by ATK. It's really a special bike, and I'll always cherish it and take care of it because of Doug and who he was. This is Doug's original three-wheeler that was designed by Honda for him, that he used in his stunts in the High Wire Act. It has 4 brake calipers on it. One is used for the foot brake, one is used for the left hand brake, and these other ones are used for turning brakes. And they work up here. There's a master cylinder up here with oil, and when Doug would want to turn left on a wheelie, he would just turn the handlebars, which would lock up the left wheel, and he would turn the handlebars to the right, which would lock up the right wheel. That's how he would turn and do all of his spin turns during his stunts. This three-wheeler, I have the spirit of Doug Domokos on the back of it because it means the world to me. And Doug's spirit, people believe in spirits, are with you for as long as you live. This three-wheeler, to wheelie this three-wheeler is easier than something with a clutch, because all you have to do is put it in gear, and you run the throttle, and you snap it up, hit the brake, get it to its balance point. You don't have to ever worry about using the clutch while you're wheeling like you do a motorcycle. But it was designed to turn, so the left wheel locks as you turn left, the right wheel locks as you turn right. This was designed for Doug's stunts, and I'm very fortunate to have it in my presence right now.
The last time I saw Doug, he came back to Michigan to see his mom, and he never would call to say he was coming. He just surprised me one day. I was at my office, and I was real excited to tell him that I was expecting my second child. And I thought I had the big surprise for him, and I go next door to see him, and he says, "Well, what are you having? I'm having a boy." And I had no idea. Here he was expecting Nick, and he knew it, and he hadn't told me or anything, and I was pregnant at the same time, and he was so excited. I had never seen him so personally touched by something. I mean, he was a guy who loved life, but when he said, "I'm having a boy," his chest just swelled up, and he was so full of pride, and he was so looking forward to meeting his new son. And I hope that his son comes to realize all the unique things that his dad did, and I'm so anxious to see if some of these talents are passed on to Nick, and if he's going to like motorcycles, and if he's going to have passion for some of the same things that his dad did.
Is there any comparable to Doug? Well, there's a lot of guys that have come around in this day that are doing wheelies on street bikes and front wheelies, and a lot of guys imitate Doug Domokos, but I tell you what, there's never going to be another Doug Domokos, as far as I'm concerned. He invented the wheel. He was the wheel, and in my eyes, that's the hard part. He invented the motor for his front wheel. He designed it. He designed the rollover. He designed the wire act. How can anybody else compete? They can try all they want, but Doug was the creator of all these inventions. He thought of that concept. He went out and achieved it. I don't know. That's second to none.
In October of 2002, Doug Domokos was inducted into the American Motorcyclists Association Heritage Motorcycle Hall of Fame. Although his short life seemed somehow unfinished, Doug had lived his life to the fullest, doing what he truly loved. And anyone who knew Doug, or anyone who had the thrill of seeing him perform, will never forget him. And all of us will forever remember him as the one and only Wheelie King.